There is dissension among Kamala's ranks. Listen to this: Biden staffers rebelling against the nominee. And all of this as the media insist that Kamala is, quote, matched for the moment. Time magazine is out with a new hot take, admitting that Kamala's time as VP was underwhelming, but perhaps because she was just never meant to be an understudy. Quote, judging from the past few weeks, Harris's own party underestimated her. Maybe the crowded 2020 primary just wasn't the right race for Harris to showcase her talents. Maybe the vice presidency wasn't the right role. Suddenly, she seems matched to the moment. But you cannot win a presidential campaign if you do not have a strategy. But Kamala's finally got one: immolate Trump. Here's how Kamala has been rolling into her recent tarmac rallies. Look at this. That looks a lot like the dozens and dozens of Trump tarmac rallies that the former president did in 2020. It's getting so bad that even CNN is noticing with this headline: Harris leans on the trappings of her office and Trump's own playbook in a quest to win the White House.
Kamala Harris is facing backlash from within her own ranks as Biden's team begins to rebel against her potential nomination. While the media tries to paint her as the right fit for the moment, it's clear there's trouble brewing. Kamala is now mimicking Trump's style, from rallies to policies, even borrowing his idea of no taxes on tips. But she's facing criticism for being inconsistent, showing different faces to different audiences. With reports of a toxic workplace and staff turnover, it's clear that Harris's campaign strategy is under serious strain.
Well, while former President Trump is holding news conferences at his home, we're still waiting to hear for Kamala Harris and when she'll have a solo press conference. She's been ducking the media while running to be the most powerful person on the planet. And yet we still don't know Harris's vision for America. The Wall Street Journal points out, quote, Harris is all but telling Americans they'll have to elect her to find out what she really believes. Isn't that nice? And the media is giving her a free ride. We saw that yesterday when Harris briefly took questions for the first time, and not a single reporter asked about her policies or her record.
Well, it's been 15 days since Kamala Harris rose to the top of the ticket, and she still has yet to hold a press conference.
Why?
Because the press doesn't want her to do any sit-downs. They are in cover-up mode. If this were Trump, there would be in the corner of your screen on every major liberal network a countdown of how many, how many days, how many hours he's gone without a freewheeling interview or press conference. It's outrageous. It's in the interest of the press to ask for this, but they're not doing so because they flipped the script. Now it's cover-up mode for Kamala.
Kayleigh McEnany shines a spotlight on Kamala Harris's notorious temper and abusive behavior, especially at rallies. She points out how Harris has a long history of berating her staff and creating a toxic work environment, with some reports suggesting she regularly unleashes her anger in public settings. McEnany highlights this troubling behavior, questioning how Harris can lead effectively when her own team struggles under her volatile leadership.
Can she survive that scrutiny?
She may be able to, and here's why I say that. I just listened to the entirety of what you said, and that was clips of Kamala in her own words. And that came after me watching the 17-minute, I think that's what it was, Kamala rally. And I feel like I watched a case of identity theft. She has stolen the identity of a moderate, middle-of-the-road cultural icon and then fled to media fairy tale land where they will let her remake her identity. She talked about being a cop and locking up fraudsters and locking up racists. And then she moved to being this fearless California prosecutor in the tunnels with the cartels, leaving behind her whole record. This woman should be polling at 3%. She is not. This is why, if you're in the Trump campaign, the sign on your door, the sign in the windows, the sign on the corkboards needs to be policy, policy, policy. Because what you just played, Jesse, is the key to success to beating Kamala Harris. Donald Trump's still the favorite, but you got to take this lady seriously because she's a totally different woman than the clips you just played.
Kayleigh McEnany joined Jesse Waters on Primetime to break down Kamala Harris's attempts to reinvent herself. Despite her shaky record, Harris is trying to pivot by putting out polished videos and rallying support from Hollywood and rappers with Trump in the mix, who has proven himself on the debate stage. Harris will struggle to defend herself against being labeled both a radical and a fraud. Trump should challenge her to a debate now, before she can gain any momentum.
The person who's having the best week is J.D. Vance. I think he's really hitting his stride as the number two. The role of number two is to reflect the policy prescriptions of the ticket and to really push back a little bit as the attack dog on the other side. What Vance did yesterday was brilliant, just spontaneously crossing the tarmac, crisscrossing over, and forcing the press to cover him, Bill, because he was there with the press, and did two things. Was clever and funny by saying, this will be my plane, I'm going to check it out, and then quickly pivoting to what's on everybody's mind. The fact that Harris won't take a single question. And why it's important for her to answer questions is she's lying from the podium. She's saying things like, I'm going to bring down prices on gas and groceries on day one. How about doing it on day 1,050? You've been there for 3.5 years. She's lying about Iran, and she's, I think, gaslighting the country from the comfort of a teleprompter and a podium. Very smart for Trump to have a press conference today. And I'm going to go one step further. When we were campaigning in 2016, we had very few resources, understaffed, under-resourced, underdog, underestimated. What did we do? We did what I think Trump and Vance will continue to do, and Harris doesn't seem to be interested in doing it all. Before you go out to the rally, before you go out to the people, backstage, you're providing 3 interviews, one to local print press, one to local radio, one to local TV. So if you're in Harrisburg, you're in Eau Claire, you're in Macomb County, Michigan, while the press is waiting for you to come out and just talk and not take their questions from the podium, from the teleprompter, you're actually giving an interview that lasts all week long, and most of those local reporters will report. They won't give their opinions. They'll just say, Trump to Harrisburg, I hear you, or Trump to Eau Claire, the forgotten man no more. That's a really smart feature of campaigns. And I would say this to the mainstream media. Kamala Harris is ignoring you because she thinks she already has you. For the same reason she doesn't go and spend a dime chasing people who vote 100% of the time and 100% of the time for Democrats, she thinks the mainstream media is already in her thrall and her corner. They should challenge that by not covering her rallies. Don't set up your camera next time. If she's not going to answer your questions, don't give her the service of covering her rallies.
Kellyanne Conway shared her insights on the current political scene, saying Trump is still in a strong position despite the media's support for Kamala Harris. She criticized Harris for not taking questions and relying on media to cover her rallies, suggesting that Trump should focus on policy issues like the economy and border security to outshine her. Conway also pointed out that Harris's strategy mirrors Biden's 2020 campaign, staying away from tough questions.
Only because it shows the best border.
Okay, former President Donald Trump speaking in Asheville, North Carolina, speaking about the speech was billed rather to be a speech about his economic policies. And while we've gotten a little bit of that, it's also just your classic rally speech where he's gone on the attack against Vice President Harris, et cetera, et cetera. I want to turn to Alex Prochet, who is inside that room now. And Elizabeth Schulze joins us, too. We will go to Elizabeth momentarily. Alex, I want to start with you because prior to this rally yesterday, Nikki Haley, one of Trump's former opponents, she goes on Fox News and she says to Trump to stop, quote unquote, whining. She says Republicans are not going to win this election, talking about Kamala Harris's race, talking about whether or not she's, quote unquote, dumb. And Trump seems to have not taken that advice. He called her crazy in this rally. He said that she's, quote, not smart. She's not intelligent. He is going after her on her personality, on personal attacks, not on policy, it would seem.
Yeah, Jay, you're right. And really, it's been 50-50 with the personal attacks versus, the personal attacks and the attacks on the process, and then rolling out, what he's basically framed as failed policies of the Biden-Harris administration. And so whenever Haley was talking about this yesterday and saying that he needed to focus on the issues, that's where he's able to bring people under the tent towards the middle. Listen, that's where there's ground to gain in this election. It's not on the far left. It's not on the far right. It's those moderates towards the middle. And so these personal attacks, whenever he's going after her intelligence, whenever he's going after the process about how there was a change at the top of the Democratic ticket, when he's talking about crowd sizes, that's all distractions. And it might resonate with certain sections of this crowd, but in the broad goal of trying to woo that middle ground voter, that moderate, that's something that doesn't really move the needle. And so thus far, he's still speaking, but thus far, it's been about 50-50 this entire speech between the personal attacks and the policy talk.
Trump did a solid job today, facing pressure from Kamala Harris's camp, who are trying to keep her from taking questions. The pressure campaign led by J.D. Vance worked. He pushed Kamala to finally speak off script, which is key to beating her. Despite this, some Democrats think hiding Harris and sticking to her scripted 17-minute speeches will be enough to win, but it's clear she's not doing much beyond that. Trump's team needs to keep pushing her off the teleprompter if they want to win.
Former President Trump going on offense with blistering attacks on Vice President Harris. He's calling her out for her stunning reversals on her own policy positions.
So for every position the fake new Kamala takes down, and all of these positions 3 weeks ago, the real Kamala said the exact opposite, With me, you will always have a president who tells it like it is. You will always have somebody where I let you know where I stand, and you can vote for me or not. The Kamala migrant invasion is also a major factor in crushing your wages and driving up the cost of health care and the cost of all of your goods. She's flooding our country with millions and millions of low-wage migrants and giving them welfare, free health care, food stamps, public benefits, and third, she's giving them what our military vets don't get. Kamala Harris wants to eliminate private health insurance. Does anybody have private health insurance here? A lot of people, yeah. She destroyed San Francisco. She's not going to destroy our country. So get your friends, get your family, register, volunteer, and get the hell out and vote. You got to vote. On November 5th, we will save our economy. We will rescue our middle class. We will put America first, and we will make America great again. Thank you very much. North Carolina, God bless you. God bless you all. Thank you very much.
He's saying Harris is all talk, pushing for votes while blaming her for rising costs and other problems. Meanwhile, Trump's team is frustrated that the media isn't covering Harris's policy changes, but they're ready to expose her inconsistencies. Despite her attempts to rebrand, voters still trust Trump more on issues like the economy, and Harris's close ties to Biden might hurt her in the end.
Here's the rise in prices year over year. Eggs up 19%, auto insurance 18.5%, shelter 5%, daycare 5%, baby food just under 5%. Top issue in our Fox polling that we put out last night at 6 p.m. The economy's it.
Yeah.
By 2 times, at least, over immigration than abortion there. Susan Rice said something on MSNBC yesterday that I guess it's kind of hard to escape the Biden-Harris combination. Mm-hmm. And she laid that out quite clear. Watch.
I think it's very important to remember that this has been the Biden-Harris agenda. Kamala Harris has been an integral architect and executor of the policies of the Biden-Harris administration.
So I'm wondering today, was that on message, Kayleigh?
For Team Biden.
Exactly.
Yes, if I were Kamala Harris in her campaign, I'd be cringing as I watched that.
Yeah.
Look, she can't escape her past. She cast the tie-breaking vote for the American Rescue Plan, $1.8 trillion in spending. Inflation was 1.4% when Biden took office. A month after American Rescue Plan, it spikes. It gets up to 4%. She can't escape this. But yeah, that's not on message for Team Kamala Harris.
It's fracking, illegals, detention centers, Medicare for all. That's just what I remember right now off the top of my head.
Well, and the other thing is that happens, right? So remember, Al Gore tried to figure out a way to distance from Bill Clinton and McCain from Bush. And then you even had Hillary Hillary Clinton tried to do it with Obama, but she needed those voters. So it's a thing that you do, but you usually have a lot more time to do it. They don't have a lot of time to do that. But there's also this. We keep seeing that clip of the woman from Philadelphia who did the interview on NBC, who just reminds everybody, it's like, you know what, maybe your life is okay, but there's a lot of people out there making minimum wage, but they go to work every day and they're having a hard time. Here's one of the reasons. Prices rising under Biden-Harris. If you just look at this year over year, overall 2.9%, but eggs are up 19%. How many times do people use eggs a day?
Kamala Harris is trying to distance herself from Biden's unpopular economic policies, but it's hard because she's been deeply involved in them. Prices are still rising, and people are feeling the pinch with things like eggs, baby food, and auto insurance costing more. Harris is now trying to rebrand herself, claiming her White House experience has changed her views on issues like fracking and Medicare for all. But many are skeptical. Trump's team is ready to call out her past statements and highlight how her policies could hurt everyday Americans.